After years of living alone in the wake of a quiet divorce, I signed up for a wellness retreat in the mountains, something my son, Adrien, insisted I do for myself. He's 24 now, and despite his gentle insistence, I could see the concern in his eyes, like he knew I had forgotten how to enjoy life. What I didn't expect was for him to join me. What I couldn't have predicted was the room mix-up that put us in the same cabin. And what I wasn't prepared for was what began to unfold between us once the distractions of the world faded into the hush of pine trees, yoga sessions, and long, silent nights by the fireplace. I hadn't driven this far in years. The winding road into the Sierra Nevada foothills curled through dense pine and crisp, golden light. Each mile peeled away the noise of the city, its buses, its sirens, its obligations. My fingers, clutched on the steering wheel, slowly loosened as the road climbed and the reception bars on my phone dropped to nothing. Adrien was already there, of course. He had taken the train up 2 days before, eager for a digital detox, as he called it. I had rolled my eyes when he first suggested the retreat. A week in a mountain sanctuary, no phones, no deadlines, no distractions. Just sunrise yoga, guided journaling, and interpersonal reconnection. "Mom," he'd said, hands gently curled around a coffee mug, "you haven't done anything just for yourself in years. When's the last time you weren't taking care of someone else?" He had no idea how much those words landed. So, I signed up. I packed my softest sweaters, my old hiking boots, and even a blank journal I'd dug out of the bottom drawer, the one I kept promising I'd use someday. The retreat center was tucked among trees like a secret. 2-story lodges made of timber and stone dotted the edge of a still lake that mirrored the sky. As I pulled into the gravel lot, I could already feel the world letting go of me. I stepped out, stretching my legs, inhaling the crisp air. It smelled like cedar and quiet. A figure stepped out from one of the lodges, Adrien. He waved, that same easy grin he'd had since he was 5. Something in me unclenched at the sight of him. "Hey," he said as I approached. His arms wrapped around me in a hug that lasted a beat longer than usual. I felt the press of his chest, solid and warm. "You look rested," I said, brushing a hand over his jacket sleeve. He chuckled. 3 days of sunrise tea ceremonies and mandatory nap time. What's not to love? I laughed, letting the sound carry a little longer than I meant to. He looked good. Healthier. There was a lightness in him I hadn't seen in a long time, not since before college, maybe. He carried himself differently now, like someone who had finally grown into their own skin. "I checked you in already," he added, grabbing my duffel from the car. They had a room mix-up, though. Only one cabin left. "It's a double. Hope you don't mind sharing." My stomach fluttered. Just for a moment. A pulse of something I couldn't name. "No, it's fine," I said quickly, masking the hesitation. "It's only a week." He smiled, and we walked up the gravel path toward the cabin. Pines whispered above us. The air was still. Inside, the space was cozy, wood-paneled walls, a fireplace, 2 beds separated by a low nightstand, and a wide window overlooking the lake. There was a soft hum of silence here. Not the uncomfortable kind. The kind that makes you feel like the world's been turned down just enough to hear your own thoughts again. I set my things on one bed. Adrien took the other. "This place is beautiful," I said, pulling open the curtains. Almost too quiet. He came to stand beside me, just close enough that our arms nearly brushed. "I like the quiet," he said softly. I turned to look at him. His profile was sharp, older than I remembered, with faint stubble along his jaw. His eyes, still boyish, studied the lake with a distant sort of calm. "How did you even find this place?" I asked. He shrugged. "A friend came here with his mom last year. Said it changed things." "Changed things how?" He didn't answer right away. Just turned toward me, his eyes lingering a little too long before he smiled and turned away. "You'll see," he said. That night, after unpacking, we joined the other guests in the main lodge for dinner, vegetarian stew, fresh-baked bread, and honeyed tea. Everyone wore soft clothes and spoke in low tones, as if reverence was the dress code. When we returned to the cabin, the fireplace was crackling. I changed into pajamas in the bathroom, brushing my teeth slower than usual, aware that I wasn't going back to an empty room. When I stepped out, Adrien was already under the covers, reading something by the firelight. He looked up, his eyes tracing me for a moment before he smiled. Comfortable. I nodded, climbing into my bed, pulling the blanket over me. The fire popped softly, filling the room with warmth and shadows. For a while, we were quiet. Then he spoke, his voice low, almost tentative. I'm glad you came. I looked over. His face was lit gold by the fire. The book was closed on his chest now. Me too, I whispered. He turned on his side to face me. The firelight flickered in his eyes. There's something good about being here with you, he said. Away from everything. I swallowed. My throat felt dry. I feel it too, I said. It's like we're remembering how to breathe. He smiled softly, then rolled onto his back, staring at the ceiling. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees. Inside, the fire glowed. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a new kind of quiet growing between us. Not distance. Not silence. Something else entirely. The next morning, I woke to the sound of birdsong, sharp and clear against the muted rustle of leaves. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then I rolled over and saw the soft rise and fall of Adrien's breath, the blanket barely covering his shoulder, his back turned toward me. The fire had gone out sometime during the night, but the room still held its warmth. I watched him for a moment longer than I meant to. There was something unfamiliar about seeing him asleep. Something vulnerable. His lashes curled against his cheek. A strand of hair fell across his brow, and he looked so much younger like that. Not the man who carried the weight of his own world, but the boy I used to wake with kisses on the forehead and cereal in hand. I slipped out of bed and dressed quietly, not wanting to disturb the peace. Outside, the lake was still, a sheet of glass reflecting the low-hanging mist and the line of trees on the opposite bank. I followed a gravel path down to the water's edge, wrapped in my cardigan, a mug of weak herbal tea warming my hands. They said the first 3 days were the hardest, the adjustment, the stillness, the disconnection from noise and distraction. But I didn't feel restless. I felt cleared out, like the inside of me had been swept of dust and echoes. When I returned to the cabin, Adrien was up, barefoot, shirtless, standing by the window with a towel slung over his shoulder, his skin dappled in sunlight. I froze for half a second, then moved. Morning, I said, trying to sound casual. He turned, smiling. You went to the lake? I nodded. It's beautiful down there, like time doesn't exist. He stretched, arms behind his head, muscles shifting under his skin. I was thinking of a swim. In that cold water? I asked, eyebrows raised. He smirked. Wakes you up. I laughed. I'll pass. He disappeared into the bathroom, and I sat on the bed, my tea now lukewarm. A quiet tension buzzed beneath my skin. Not discomfort, just awareness. Like I had become hyper-attuned to the space between us. Later that afternoon, we attended one of the group workshops. The theme was releasing the role. We sat on meditation cushions in a sunlit room, strangers arranged in a wide circle. The facilitator, a woman named Iris, guided us through a visualization. You've worn roles your whole life, she said gently. Daughter, partner, parent, friend. Take a moment to imagine taking off those identities like coats, one by one, until you are just you, who is left when no one is watching. I sat still, eyes closed, but my breath trembled. Who am I when I'm not a mother? When I'm not the responsible one, the caretaker, the fixer? I glanced sideways, just once, and found Adrien already looking at me. His gaze was soft, unblinking. I looked away. That evening, we walked the trail around the lake. The path wound between trees, carpeted in pine needles. The air smelled of sap and damp moss. It reminded me of childhood summers, though I couldn't place why. Adrien walked beside me, hands in his jacket pockets. You were quiet in the workshop, he said after a while. So were you. He glanced over. I was watching you. My step faltered. Why? He shrugged, eyes forward. Because I wanted to know who you'd be, without the mom label. A pause stretched between us, long and taut. And I asked, my voice quiet. He stopped walking, turned to face me. I think you're someone I still want to know, he said. The words landed like a pebble dropped in deep water, small, but the ripples kept spreading. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. There were 100 things I could have said, but I said none of them. Instead, I reached for his hand. Just a gentle touch, fingers brushing fingers, like testing the temperature of something too hot to hold. He didn't pull away, and neither did I. That night, something shifted. It wasn't a thunderclap or some sudden, irreversible event. It was quieter than that, more dangerous somehow, like the slow bending of a branch under too much weight, still intact, but on the verge of snapping. We didn't say much after the walk. Back in the cabin, the silence between us was different. Not awkward, just full. Adrien showered first. I sat by the fire, staring into the embers, trying not to think too much. Trying not to feel the warmth of his hand still echoing in mine. When he stepped out of the bathroom, steam trailing behind him, he wore only sweatpants, his skin still flushed from the heat. His hair was damp, curling slightly at the edges. He ran a towel down his chest absently as he crossed the room to his bed. I glanced up once.
And that was enough.
His eyes caught mine. Neither of us looked away. The air between us was thin, fragile. He spoke first, his voice lower than usual. You okay? I nodded. Just tired. That wasn't a lie. But it wasn't the truth either. I moved to the bathroom, brushing my teeth slowly, trying to steady my breath. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled my shirt over my head and changed into a sleep tank. I stared at myself in the mirror, hair tousled, lips bare, eyes wide. I didn't look like someone's mother in that moment. I looked like a woman trying to hold back a flood. I turned off the light and stepped back into the room. He was already in bed, one arm behind his head, the other resting on his stomach. His eyes followed me across the room. I crawled under my blanket, but I didn't turn away. The firelight danced shadows across the ceiling. Outside, the wind curled against the windows, soft as breath. After a long silence, he spoke again. Do you ever think, he said slowly, that some people only really meet when everything else falls away? I turned to face him. He was looking right at me. My breath caught. You mean like now? I asked. He gave a quiet laugh.
Yeah.
Like now. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My fingers gripped the edge of the blanket tighter. He sat up slowly, propping a pillow behind him. Can I ask you something? I nodded, though my throat had closed. What would you be if you weren't my mom? The question split the air. I sat up too, heart pounding. Adrien. I mean it, he said, gently, carefully. Not in some weird way. Just here in this moment. In this place, without labels. Without the world. Who would you be? I stared at him, eyes searching his. And I knew. I would be someone who wanted to be seen. Not as a caretaker. Not as a guide. But as a woman. A whole woman. The words hovered on my lips, but I couldn't say them. So instead I whispered, I don't know. Adrien leaned forward slightly. I think I do. I could feel the pull now. Not physical. Worse. Emotional. Deep. Magnetic. He reached across the small space between our beds, just his hand, resting on the edge of my blanket. Not touching me. Just waiting. My breath was shaky. I felt like I was standing on the edge of something I'd never be able to walk back from. And I still didn't move. He spoke again, voice raw. I'm not asking you for anything. I need to say this. I think I see you more clearly now than I ever have. Not as a role. Or a title. Just you. And I don't know what to do with that. I swallowed hard. And then finally I reached out. My hand met his. fingers weaving, slow and unsure. We sat like that for what felt like hours. No words, no expectations, just the firelight flickering, and our hands, together. He didn't come to my bed. I didn't go to his. But something irreversible had happened. Something that couldn't be unnamed. And that night, as we fell asleep with our hands still tangled between the beds, I understood something terrifying and beautiful. Some connections don't need names. They just need space to breathe. I don't know what time it was when I woke. The fire had burned down to a soft glow, amber embers shifting in the hearth. The room was nearly dark, save for the pale silver of moonlight seeping through the window. It fell across the foot of my bed in a perfect, trembling square. At first, I wasn't sure what stirred me. Then I felt it. A breath.
Close.
So close. And then lips, light as air, pressing against my shoulder. Not a dream. Not imagined.
Real.
I froze, eyes still closed, heart thudding. He didn't move. Not yet. Just breathed against me, warm and quiet. Like he wasn't sure if I was awake. Like he didn't want to wake me. But I was awake. Fully, achingly awake. And I didn't move away. I let it happen. That soft kiss again. Barely there, reverent. Another. Then stillness. I opened my eyes slowly. He was kneeling beside my bed, half shrouded in shadow. His hair messy from sleep, his face unreadable. I turned my head toward him, not speaking. He flinched, like he'd been caught in something sacred. He started to back away, his hand slipping from the edge of the mattress. But I caught it. My fingers closed around his wrist.
He stopped.
I sat up slowly, the blanket slipping from my shoulder. The air between us was silent, full of everything we couldn't name. Still holding his wrist, I whispered, "Come here." A pause. Then, with a breath so quiet it could have been a prayer, he moved. He climbed in beside me, not hurried, not greedy, like someone stepping into a memory he didn't want to ruin. The mattress shifted under his weight, and then we were lying side by side. Not touching. Not yet. Just breathing the same breath. I turned to face him in the dark. He was watching me, eyes filled with that same question he hadn't dared ask out loud. And I gave the answer, without speaking. I touched his cheek. His breath caught. He reached up, slowly, like he didn't trust this was real. His hand settled over mine, warm and trembling. And then he leaned in.
Not fast.
Not bold. A whisper of closeness. A pause. Then his lips found mine.
Soft.
Careful. Like he was afraid I'd disappear if he kissed me too deeply. But I didn't. I was still there. And I kissed him back. Every rule we'd ever followed, every line we'd ever drawn, melted away like the last snow of winter. The world didn't end. It just slowed. His arms came around me, and I moved into him, into that warmth that had been just out of reach for so long. It wasn't wild. It wasn't reckless. It was something else. Something deeper. When we finally pulled away, he pressed his forehead to mine, and in the hush that followed, I heard the only thing that mattered. "I didn't plan this," he whispered. "I know," I whispered back. The night wrapped around us like a secret, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what it meant to be held by him. I woke to sunlight on my face, soft and dappled, filtered through pine branches and the sheer curtain fluttering in the early breeze. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then I felt him. Warmth behind me. A steady breath against the back of my neck. His arm, curved loosely around my waist, not possessive, just present. Real. My heart stirred, but not with panic. With peace. I stayed still, afraid to wake the moment. His chest rose and fell in time with mine, and something about the rhythm made me feel safe. Not like I'd done something wrong, but like I'd found something I didn't even know I was missing. I opened my eyes slowly. The fire was long out, but the air in the room still held its warmth. Our two beds, once divided by space and caution, now pushed together, Blankets tangled like the boundary between us had been erased sometime in the night. Because it had. Carefully, I turned to face him. He was already awake, watching me. His expression wasn't one of regret. It was calm. "Hi," I whispered, not sure what else to say. He smiled gently, brushing a loose strand of hair from my cheek. "Hi." For a long time we said nothing else. Words felt too heavy, too small for what had passed between us. Finally, I asked, "Are you okay?" He nodded. "More than okay." "But this, what does it mean?" His smile faded just slightly, not into sadness, but something softer.
Thoughtful.
"I don't know," he admitted. "But I know it didn't feel wrong." I searched his face.
No.
It didn't. He exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding that breath all night. We lay there for a while longer, wrapped in silence, not needing anything else. Eventually, we dressed without a word. Not out of shame, just a quiet understanding. The morning outside was already beginning to stir, the call of birds, the crunch of footsteps on gravel, voices from the main lodge. The world was returning, but something in me had shifted. I was no longer just a mother, just a woman alone in the woods. I was someone who had been seen, fully. As I stood by the window, watching the lake shimmer in the light, Adrien came up behind me. His hand found mine again, familiar now. "Welcome. We should go to breakfast," he said. I nodded, but I didn't move. Instead, I turned to him and asked quietly, "What happens when this ends?" He didn't pretend to know, but he stepped closer and said, "Then we carry it with us, whatever it was." I leaned into his chest, just for a moment, just long enough to feel that what we shared wasn't fragile anymore. It was real. And no matter what the world outside decided, we had already lived something no one could take back.